he ended up getting a call from Barnes and Noble, and they said, you have to buy all your books back. And he said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, we have to make room for the new books. So we want you to buy your books back. It's $104,000 and you have 10 days to send us the money. He had to not only take a mortgage on his house, but borrow from everybody he could and maximize his credit cards to come up with the money. Because most authors don't realize that when your book is in a bookstore, people don't know about it, nobody's going to buy it. You know, there's too much competition in a bookstore. You go to the bookstore for a book, or if you're looking for a specific topic, but you're not going to just walk in there and just randomly start buying books because you're in a bookstore. And so that's why when you see my books on Amazon, Amazon sends me $15 for every book they sell, because I'm the one that publishes it. I'm the one that has the print on demand fulfill the order, and Amazon just takes $2 for every book they sell. So if you have Amazon print it, you wouldn't even get $1.70 on a $20 book. So I found all these ways of reversing it so it's for the benefit of the author instead of the benefit. In my mind, there was no reason for Amazon to take 50% of the book, plus it costs 50% to print the book, so that leaves you with 10%.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, with my clients, there's a ton of them who come to me, and I'll ask, how do you plan to publish when you're ready to go? And a lot of them will say, I'm going to put it up on KDP, which is what CreateSpace became, as you know.
Yeah.
And I'll say to them, well, you can. And there are people who make that work very well for themselves, but if you're going to do it, you have to go into it with your eyes open, and you have to look out for all of these different things, these sneaky things that Amazon will do that will cut seriously into what you personally can take home, your return on investment on the book.
I was on Oprah back in '93, and the lady I was on Oprah with, Pat Evans, wrote the books. There's 7 or 8 or 9, whatever, on verbally abusive relationships. And I'd come up with a unique communication concept where it's like the other person's speaking and you can't say a word until they say they're done. You can take notes and then you can question them later. And that was how I got my relationship with Michael, who was my last relationship. He was Croatian, and in his family, the person who yelled the loudest was the one who got hurt. And I said, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. So we're going to sit down and figure out what really is going on. And we did this for 3.5 hours one day. And I told Pat about it. So she made it a chapter in her book. And Oprah, when she read the book, she said, I want Sharon and Mike to be on the show. So we went on the show, and Pat has a mainstream publisher. She makes 35 cents a book. She has sold 7 million books. No, sorry. I think 700,000 books. 7 books.
Lots of books.
It's a lot of books. She's never made more than $35,000 a year. Wow. And I sat down with her and I said, if you had published this yourself after the first one, you would make at least $100,000 to $150,000 a year compared to $35,000 a year. And you could pay people to do all these things that you're constantly complaining about, like booking the shows and all of the website work and everything. She couldn't afford anything. Thank God her house was paid for because she had spent 20 years working for AT&T. So she had everything covered that way, and she had a pension that she had, but $35,000 was her top year as an author, which made no sense to me because she did all the work. And that's what most authors don't realize. A publisher's job is to print the book, period. Now, if you're someone noteworthy, they'll give you an advance. But that advance is paid back through the sale of the book.
Right.
And nobody understands that until they have to pay it back. Then the publisher doesn't do anything to book you on a show or get you interviews. So what I did is I came up with, there are 1,040 roughly AM talk show programs that have more than 10,000 watts. 10,000 watts, you're pretty much guaranteed to sell 20, 25 books. The higher the wattage, the bigger the audience, the more books you sell. So the most books I've ever sold in an hour on a radio interview was about 104. Not bad for an hour's work when I'm clearing $15 a book. Right? So I put together this program. There's 52 video lessons on how to get the book ready to publish. So the easiest, most simple way to get your ISBN number, your website, get people tracking to the website. I even came up with a phenomenal, easy way of getting the website to show up in the top 10. So there's just simple things that, I mean, I taught blogging. So I was able to delve into this on a really deep basis because I was teaching people how to set up a blog, to have that recognition of being the expert in that field. And so I took all of this information over the 20 years of printing, and then what do you do next? So then the second portion of the program was how do you get the book out into the world? Now, not everybody is going to be comfortable doing speaking, and I was one of those people that drug my feet, would not do it. I didn't want to do it. I grew up stuttering. There was no way I wanted to be a speaker. So I had this mentor who took me to a Lions Club meeting, and we were finishing eating lunch, and he leans over and he said, by the way, you're the speaker today. And I could have crawled under the table. I mean, I was just mortified. I had to get up and say something to speak. I wasn't prepared, but I loved him so much for what he was doing that I got up, I spoke. I can't remember a word I said. But 6 months later, I was at a different Lions Club meeting, and this woman walks up to me and she says, you know, you saved my business and my marriage.
Wow.
Oh, really? How did I do that? And she says, well, when you were at the last Lions Club, she said, I had to come and see you today just to tell you. She said, you said that if you couldn't quantify your business, then you're not able to control your business. And she said, then afterwards, when I asked you what you meant by that, her business was selling laser cartridges that were replenished. So at the time, HP laser cartridges were $150 a piece. She was doing them for $75. But somebody would call her and she'd run 20 miles away to go pick up that laser cartridge, go fill it, and then bring it back the same day. And I said, you can't do that and make any money. I said, just the gasoline alone, you've just eaten up any profits you have. I said, find somebody who's retired, set up a route. They're in Walnut Creek one day, they're in Concord one day, they're in Pleasanton one day, and they just do this route, pick up and delivery. So if you pick it up on Tuesday, you deliver it the next Tuesday. And she ended up where she was putting $5,000 a month on her credit cards to where she was making $15,000 a month in the first 6 months. And it would completely changed her business around. But the really cool thing was she was able to be at home when her kids came home from school instead of constantly asking the neighbor, will you just watch for the kids and make sure that they come in and they're okay? And it was just so amazing to think that something that simple, to me, it was logical. To her, it didn't even occur to her. You know, and so all of these things that I wanted people to understand, because my mind is very analytical, it's very logical, and when I see something that's a problem, then I see a solution. And so I came up with all these things for authors to be able to do where if you're not comfortable speaking in front of a group, radio interviews. I get people to imagine, they do a test interview with me, they can record it, it's on their website. I had a radio show on an AM station in San Francisco for 2 years called A Business Affair. And I had another radio show that was called Choices for a Healthier Lifestyle. And I did 2 years of interviews with people which might really be effective for you, where I would interview anybody who had anything to do with helping authors. And I had amazing results from that series where people who had always thought they wanted to write a book, but it was too much for them to think about, I would be able to direct them to a ghostwriter or direct them in a way that would help them get what they wanted done. And so I created this whole program where there's actually 30 different ways to market your book. And if you pick 3, you'll make $100,000 a year. But it's your comfort zone. And that makes it possible for somebody to work at home, to not have to have a job, to be a full-time author, to be a full-time parent. And that was one of my biggest pet peeves is in California, and I think it's now national other than after COVID, children under 12, 60% of them only saw their parents on the weekends. Mm. And I thought, you know, what a terrible position to be in where you have kids and it's all supposed to be like this whole evolution of family, but you never get to spend time with the family because on the weekends you're running around doing laundry and the grocery shopping and getting set up for the week. And, you know, on Sunday you're so exhausted, you just don't have time to be with the family. And so I would come up with things that I thought, well, this will make it a little bit easier for the family to become more cohesive. So I came up with this whole program, author training program, to be able to help people and to be able to get them to actually focus on something to generate enough material to become an author so that if you have, you know, 10 CPAs or bankers or business attorneys or chiropractors and you're the one that has the book, then you're the one who generally gets the attention.
Right.
Very effective. It really works. And I even have had chiropractors where they give their book away because that's what opens the door for what they need to do. I have one guy who, Jerry Hart, interesting only because it's just a story. His brother is Mickey Hart from the Grateful Dead. And he was working on an AM station as a talk show, not talk show, but the host of the show. And that KISS laid off all of their DJs and put tape music.
Yeah.
$120,000 a year and then unemployed. So that was when email marketing first came up. And I unfortunately didn't think that it would ever be anything worthwhile. So thank goodness for him, it became very worthwhile. And he got clients like the Oakland Raiders and the Hyatt hotels and, you know, big clients because he had nothing to base anything on. So he'd just walk in and say, hey, you need to do this. And they believed him and it worked. And so I took him and I said, you know, you need to establish your expertise in having a book. And he didn't quite understand why that would be beneficial. So I helped him come up with the outline, sat there and just, you know, drilled down until we could come up with enough material for an outline, and then had him write one article every week, which was 2.5 hours to write 10 pages if it's a 6x9 book, but it would be an article that he could publish in a trade publication. And then by the time he had 12 weeks, he had the 12 articles, he had his book. And he was speaking at an event, and this, it was in Texas, I think it was Houston, and this company said, we love what you have to say, and because you have a book, we're going to invite you to come to England. So Jerry goes to England, and now he has to have a package, right? because you know all of the programs where you got 10 speakers on stage and everybody has a package. So he created the facade of a package knowing what the package would be when he got home. And in 1 hour, he sold $80,000 worth of this package. I went, wow, you know, I've never sold $80,000 in an hour.
That's pretty cool.
So he took it to the next level, which I was just so impressed with. He was just amazing what he was able to do with it. He doesn't do any email marketing anymore. He does mostly real estate rehab, but it was a wonderful era for him. He was able to make enough money to buy his first house. He bought his car and paid cash, and he just constantly leveraged that money to come up with new things and speaking at trade shows. Like one of my authors, Sue Kopek, her book is called Wet Dog Millionaire. And she was like, what? So she had been grooming dogs.
I was wondering.
And the dogs were getting to the point where they were too heavy to lift onto the table to groom. And so I said, I had met her at an event in Las Vegas. It was an author's event. And I had said to her, you know, eventually you're not going to be able to do this job. At 52, you're really pushing it, but eventually you're going to have to think of something else. So a year later, she called and she said, you're absolutely right. I want to write this book. And so she wrote it. It's a very small book. She sells it for $14.95. But I thought, where is her audience, right? And I came up with this idea of the trade shows where people who groom dogs would go. And there are people there who sell dog grooming tools. This was in the time when they just started like cutting the animal fur to make them look like a lion.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, they would do all these, dye the hair, I mean, do all kinds of really fun things. And so she ended up, they wouldn't book her as a speaker because she had never spoke before. So she had a room at the hotel and she had flyers on her table and she said she would be speaking at 6 o'clock that night. And she sold 100 books that night, just speaking in a room that she rented other than her hotel room. And so the event coordinator was so impressed that they booked her for the next one, and she sold 1,000 books at that event, which was darn good because she was making profit $10 a book. So that was like really, really great to have somebody who's a brand new author make $10,000 in a weekend. And so she had not ever profited $10,000 in her dog grooming in a month. So to make that in a weekend, really cool. So then she focused on trade shows. So when you are working with people and you're doing the ghostwriting and you become really creative, you can actually help people turn an idea into a full-time business. So what I did to help people like you is to create this program. It's $1,500 and it's the first 52 lessons pre-press. The next 32 lessons are post-press for getting the book out into the world. And for $1,500, I give you 25%, and then I help you figure out how to sell a coaching program, which is where you can make $1,500 per person, where you're walking them through the process. So you know how you can have 10 people read the same book and they get different ideas and they either act or they don't. The people who don't act on what they read, they're the ones who need coaching. So there are people who are self-starters, there are people who have discipline, and there are people who it's always a good idea, but they just never seem to get to it. And that's where the coaching comes in. So you can do once a month, you can do group calls, you can do one-on-one once a week, and you can structure it any way you want to make sure that your authors actually become successful, which then helps you in turn so that you don't have to write as many books to make the same amount of money, but you can actually make more money because you're doing like in the group lesson kind of thing.
Well, I would appreciate it if you'd send me the information on where I can send my clients for this. You know, what I'm most interested at this point in my career is I'm not interested in helping people launch careers. That's not, you know, I've done plenty of that. I've written plenty of those books, and they're not the projects that I want to work on. The projects that I want to work on are with the smart, accomplished professionals who've already made their money. They've already, people honestly like you, but who are not inclined to be authors themselves, people who have climbed the hill, they've gotten there, and now they want to help others. They want to change the world. And those are the books that I want to work on. You know, I've done plenty of the CEO retrospectives. I've done plenty of the build credibility, launch my speaking career, and that's fine. What I want to do now is help people who want to change the world.
Hmm.
And
Very
so
cool.
those are the projects that I'm taking on at this point, and a lot, some of it's like, I can give you an example of the last two projects that I worked on. One is a ghost and one is a developmental editor. I ghosted a book for a woman who manages two long-term serious medical health conditions and developed a very rare cancer on top of that. And she wanted to write a book that would be a combination of a memoir of her cancer battle and a practical guide for people who are going through cancer for how to manage that cancer experience. And she really wanted to talk about the things that they don't tell you. She says, they tell you, you learn about what the treatments are going to be like. You get plenty of information about the treatments and your treatment options and what physically is going to happen to you. Nobody tells you how to manage your relationships with your doctors. Nobody tells you how to say no to your doctors when you feel you must. Nobody tells you how to manage relationships with the people in your circle who don't know how to interact with you anymore now that they're sick. They don't know how to help you. You don't know how to tell people, I don't want another damn casserole. Please don't bring me any more casseroles. Right?
Yeah.
So what she wanted was a practical, both a memoir of her journey and then also a practical for you and your caregivers. Here's how you set boundaries. Here's how you set intentions. Here's how you get through this process with your heart and your soul intact, and manage it sort of from a personal. So that was a book that I ghosted.
Cool.
And then I just finished a project with another guy who is a very successful finance and investment professional, but who over the course of his years of work began getting really interested in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and using that for his own personal skill building. And so he wrote, and I developmentally edited, basically he calls it how to learn any skill at all. And so what he does is he uses neuro-linguistic programming and he shows people step by step, whatever skill it is you want to master that you felt you've never been able to master, from making the perfect omelet to juggling to learning to be a professional public speaker, whatever it is, becoming a faster runner off the starting blocks, any skill you want to master, here is the framework that you use to do that. And you can apply it in any field whatsoever.
Oh.
And so those are the projects that I like working on. Are these, these people who've passed through something and have this specialized knowledge to share that really will make an impact immediately in people's lives. And I guess it's because I've done so many CEO retrospectives where they just kind of want to talk about how awesome they are. Ultimately, that's kind of what the book is about. And they all have the same things to say, but they all think they're saying something new. It's like, okay, I've done plenty of those.
So
I
actually
really want to change the world.
I don't know if you looked on my LinkedIn profile, but I'm going to be building a school for 6,000 kids that are living on the streets in the U.S. and moving them to a high school program in Belize.
I was looking at that website, yes.
This is a 20-year goal that is finally coming to fruition, hopefully within the next few days. I have 180 people who also have similar humanitarian projects in that they will have the funding to be able to do homes for veterans, cleaning up the environment, the lifelong dream, providing food for those who can't, bringing people to 100% health through things that most people don't even know are released or out there. So there's no disease that has to be in any way debilitating to anybody. Every disease is curable. I had cancer in 2000. I used the Rife machine. The Rife machine was invented in 1935. No one since 1935 has had to die of cancer, but because of the way our system is set up, our American Medical Association, our pharmaceuticals are so powerful that they don't want people to know that there are choices. There are people who, they want to do homeless communities, do tiny home homeless communities. And most of them need to get the information out there to inspire other people to do the same. So you're about to witness the biggest change in the world that has happened, I think, ever. And I'm not even slightly stating how magnificent this is going to be. There will be no more world hunger. There will be education for everybody. There will be free power. There will be medical devices, medical systems that buck the system completely. And you might have heard President Trump referring to our hospitals will be completely revamped within a year. And that's what he's alluding to. But I have only 180 of the 75 million people in the world who are going to be part of this. Mine is,
well, I sure hope so. These are the things that keep me up at night. So,
well, just for your own benefit, there are people out there who care so much. I did an investment in 2012. I was told that the investment would take no more than 3 years. You know, here it is 8 years later, and it's finally happening. And so that's where I'm getting the funding for the school, as well as everybody else who's in my organization, the 180 people. And not that we've been waiting patiently, but we know what's at stake here. And so we have been, you know, constantly having to look at other things to keep us afloat while we're waiting for this to actually take place. And it actually could be announced tomorrow, but it should be announced before July 4th. There's a lot of people who don't want it to happen because you can imagine it is going to completely change the structure of our medicine, pharmaceuticals, political, everything that you think is the problem. It will change them. So there will be no more hunger in the world. The thing that really bothered me, have you heard of Thrive the movie? It's a free movie.
I don't know.
The grandson of Procter and Gamble, he and his wife produced the movie, and they found that 100 million a year would eliminate hunger around the world. Not just in the US, but around the world. There would be no more hunger. So my question was, why hasn't someone done it? Because the Nobel Prizes, they have been funded through this source called the platform, and that's been in existence since World War II. The platforms, when Europe needed to rebuild and there was no money, they went to the richest people in Europe and said, if you put up 100 million, we'll turn that into 200 million, but you have to take 80 million of that second 100 million and put it into humanitarian projects. And that has been happening since World War II. And that's part of what I'm part of now. And it's amazing that if you could put 100 million on a platform and have it be 200 million, then there would be no world hunger if that platform investment was directed towards world hunger, and one towards education and one towards housing. You know, there would not be the situation that we're in. There would be no war because people wouldn't have to be fighting like in Iraq 3 years ago when I was working on some of the intel stuff that I was doing. People couldn't even afford to buy a loaf of bread. There was no flour. They couldn't make their own. They couldn't afford to have electricity. They were living in these hovels that had been bombed out and had nothing. And there's no excuse for this. When I look at the Syrian refugees, right, we're going to take 1 million Syrian refugees, move them to a new land, call it Little Syria, through 3D printing. Have you seen the construction 3D printing?
I've seen a lot of different things done through 3D printing. So
Winsun in Shanghai can build 10 homes, 1,500 square feet in one day with 3D printing. The
pretty
materials
amazing.
are composite concrete, and they will last over 1,000 years. They can build a 6-story, 400,000 square foot building in 1 week and have it habitable in 4 weeks, dropping all the electrical and the plumbing in it. I mean, those are the kinds of things that are possible when somebody can focus on it. And this company, Winsung, is just brilliant. They're absolutely incredible what they've been able to do. So these people who are humanitarian driven, which I'm one of 75 million, it's a huge group of people. Their only concern is, how do we make the world a better place? How do we make it what it's meant to be? And so there's this whole new avenue, I think, that you'll be thrilled to know about and be a part of. And even if you wrote as a bystander and you took 12 projects and made that a book, and then the next 12 and the next 12, you would just be in awe of the things that are going to happen, and very quickly.
Well, it sounds fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, these are the things that keep me up at night. So if you can make it possible for me to sleep at night, that'll be fantastic.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's really what we've been working for, and it looks like it's finally going to come through for us.
Well, I've really appreciated the conversation, and if you would please go ahead and send me the materials for the program you were talking about. There are definitely people with whom I can share that and who would benefit from it.
Okay.
And there's a lot of folks that I talk to who are not a good, fit for my business and what I do, but who would really benefit from having access to a program like yours. And so it's, part of the reason Bjarne wanted to connect me with some of these people is I was telling him, these are the things that I do and I want to do. These are the things that I do not do or do not wish to do. These are the ways that I want to be able to point people to other professionals who can help them when they don't fit with what I do. And so he's trying to help me connect with professionals like yourselves, to whom I can pass projects that either aren't a good fit for me, or to whom I can pass beloved clients when our work is done, and I'll know that they're being properly shepherded on to the next step.
Right.
One of my goals, this is something when I first started working about 10 years ago, and I saw how many of my clients were getting ready to step basically into a shark tank of self-publishing, Yeah. And I thought, okay, I need to get better educated, and I need to pass this information on to people so that they don't get their heads torn off when they get out there.
Yeah, and fortunately it isn't as bad as it used to be, where to get a book published you had to order 5,000 and they sat in the garage because nobody told anybody what to do with them once you got them.
Yeah, there's still plenty of ways to get screwed, though.
Yeah, there are. So, but what you'll really like about what I put together is it's simple and anybody can do it. And I've taken people who, one lady painted houses with her brother, and she published her book, and she was able in 6 months to walk away from painting the houses and make it a full-time income, because that's what she was more comfortable doing, but she had no other way of making income because that's what she was familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, please do send me that information so that I can direct people to
it.
Absolutely. And in terms of what I'm looking for, and in terms of networking and synergy, I want to speak with people who want books ghosted, who have the capacity to, and who want to change the world with what they're doing.
Well, I should have plenty of people to send to you.
Because I've talked to plenty of people who want to change the world, but who unfortunately don't.
They don't. Yeah,
have the
but
capacity to do it,
all of the 180 people who are part of my investment group, they will have more than enough money to do anything they want, and they have some very lofty goals.
Yeah. I've had to have a lot of gentle conversations with people about why their expectations need to change, so being able to speak with people who already have the right expectations and already understand, what kind of investment, both financial and then also in terms of other resources they
Right,
need to make, and who are
right.
capable of doing that. I can't tell you how many potential clients I've talked to who basically start out by saying, well, everybody says I have this really amazing life story and that it needs to be a movie. So I want you to help me write a book so my life can become a Lifetime movie. So I have to have a lot of gentle conversations. Well, that's a lovely goal. And from what you've told me, you do have a very powerful story. Let me help you understand how those things happen.
So I have a resource for you that you can kind of just, I'll introduce you to Kathy Krantz Stewart. She and her husband are here in LA, and I'm actually at an Airbnb. I've moved 72 times in 5 years while I was
Wow.
waiting for this to happen. And Kathy and her husband are screenwriters, and everything they work on gets on Hallmark. Everything. So if they do the screenplay, it is a Hallmark movie.
I would also very much like to have that connection. I would be very careful how I used it.
You'd need to be,
to
but
make sure, to make
I
sure
can
that the
trust.
people.
Yeah, I can trust that you would do that.
Yeah.
I know that you already have integrity. I can tell just by the conversation.
Oh,
So
well,
I know
that's
you
kind
wouldn't
of you.
be
Thank you.
misusing.
Out of all the conversations I have had one conversation with one potential client who would have been somebody I'd pass on to somebody like that. All the rest of them, God bless them, they don't have the financial means, they don't have the savvy, if you tried to sort of explain to them how they needed to build a platform and a network, they would not have the understanding or the capacity to do it. It's just, so yes, I absolutely want those connections, and I can assure you that I'm very careful and selective who would get passed on, because I do understand that while everybody is a beloved child of God and has many gifts, not all of them are well positioned
Right.
to move into that.
Right.
So,
are you also on Facebook?
no, I actually closed my Facebook account in 2016, and despite many efforts by wonderful contacts to convince me to return to it, I've become convinced that they are a bad actor.
Yeah,
And
I've gone from 4,900 friends to 1,380 in just a year. I keep deleting people,
well,
and
I'm so appalled by the company's ethics that I just don't feel like I can return to them.
They don't have ethics.
It's not even that they have bad ethics, it's that they have none.
They have none. No. It's a moving target. They don't even have anything you can
I've
pin
had
down.
so many people say, you need to get back on Facebook. You could do this, you could do that, you could do this. And I go, I know I could. Well, see, and I'm not going to do it.
I have a program for the school for the kids. It's called Visiting Instructors Program. And primarily why I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook is because people who are phenomenal stained glass artists can come down for a week and teach a class in stained glass. And so Facebook and LinkedIn are wonderful resources for those kinds of people.
Yeah.
I met a guy that he said in 3 hours he can get anybody in the world to remember every bone in your body.
I would love to see that. I admit I would love to see that.
So he's coming down to teach classes for the kids for a week. I mean, they're really amazing people out there. That savant that can add any number of numbers together without writing them down. I don't even remember his name, but I have him. He's coming down to Belize to teach a class in how you can do that on a practical skill. You know, and there's a boy that started at 6 years old using crystals for healing, and he's coming to teach some classes on crystals. I mean, so Facebook and LinkedIn, they really do have a place in my life, but not limiting, you know, I just keep limiting them down to who is it that the kids will benefit from.
Well, I've leaned into LinkedIn a lot harder since having left Facebook, and
much more professional.
It's been tough. It's been really difficult to have to tell people no, because there've been some, you know, there's some really good Facebook groups, and I'd like to be connected with the people in them. And when you're a ghostwriter, you spend most of your time by yourself, and I'm well suited to that. But, you know, for about 12 hours a day, the only person I talk to on most days is a dog. And you know, you can't measure her level of disinterest in my work. So she's like, really? That's awesome. Can I have a treat now?
Yeah.
So, you know, I do miss that social outlet and, you know, that opportunity to interact with other ghostwriters and to complain. Oh, can you believe what this guy said to me? You know, that, but and the news about Facebook and the things that they've been up to just gets worse and worse. And every time I think, well, maybe I can find a way to make it work, something comes out in the news and I go, no, I just don't want to give them anything of myself.
Well, I will eventually have a team of people. So I have a woman who is responsible for the VIP program, and she used to interview people like Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra, and I mean, major contributors. And so she's actually being full-time working for my program, bringing in people that she'll interview first so that the whole campus gets to hear them on the radio program, and then the employees and the students will then participate in the classes. Like we have one guy who teaches levitation, and I just think that'd be the coolest thing to learn. So,
I'd love to see a live demonstration of that. I've never seen it.
Yeah, there's people all over the world who do it. YouTube videos, unbelievable people. There was a America's Got Talent guy who not only levitated, but then he projected himself to a building that was a block away. I mean,
on America's Got Talent?
Yes.
How about that?
You can actually look it up. I was so impressed. So my ancestor was Don Juan Mathis, who taught Carlos Castaneda. Don Juan Mathis, you could be talking to him, and he'd say, really, you think you're talking to me? And he'd turn around and look, and there he was on top of a mountain. Amazing.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so I've always been very curious about projecting and levitation, and if one person can do it, other people can do it.
Oh, Lord, I have enough trouble managing the body I'm in. Well, I have another appointment starting very shortly, so I need a little time to prepare for that.
Okay.
I've enjoyed the conversation immensely.
Same here, Carolyn. Thank you for your time.
Please do send me that information so that I can put it on my list of things that my resources I can give to people who need it.
Very good.
So I hope you have a great afternoon,
Thank you.
I'll look forward to communicating with you again soon, I hope.
Thank you very much. You take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.